Thank you very much, Marabu. Quite a number of questions and concerns you've raised, and I believe the members that are here are able and very able to respond to them. We are lucky to have Charlo here, who is not just an anybody. He's the first and only learned person we are having on the space tonight. We'll come to him in a few. For now, I see quite a number of hands are up, so I don't know if we want to go with the real Joe first. Real Joe, what's concerning you, sir?
Thank thank you, Eli. Actually, it's what you and Obed were discussing earlier, so what revolves around our country in terms of tribal and things like that. I think it is known that after elections, once we have one of the setup of the executive in terms of the CS positions, the constitution is clear that it is supposed to have the face of the country. I think knowing so well that the president and the deputy president might not come from the communities that we have in Kenya, then we can fix that with our cabinet and have a cabinet that is assisting the president and the deputy president to work in the face, having the face of our country. Even though I know this is something that can be debated. Also, alluding to the fact that is it we having a problem in terms of tribalism and things like that? I mean, this is something that, yes, we can look for a way in which we can live with, but you also have to understand how it has been instilled in our DNA in this country. It was used by the colonial regime, tribalism, to divide and rule and make sometimes Kikuyus look like this. Then the colonial regime tells Luos Kikuyus are doing this and this, things like that. The same tactics were used by Moi, by Kenyatta. Then come Moi, and it has been used like that. So what then is the solution to some of these things? You see, Obed and Eli, today, me, I'm a member, I'm a very strong member of Bunge la Wananchi, and I take my time to attend the Bunges. I always ensure that I attend the Bunges.
Wait, are you the member of parliament for Kimbi Kimbi?
Kimbi, I'm don't worry. So I always take my time to attend the Bunges, unless I'm out of the country. I'll tell you, today I went to the Bunge to educate my fellow members of the Bunge about this amendment. To my surprise, I found them discussing this. I was very happy. But I'll tell you about this Jivaji Bunge. This Jivaji Bunge is one of those Bunges that is usually 50-50 and is usually driven by tribes. And initially, if you went to this Bunge last year or the previous years and discussed anything against then ODM, Azimi, and all those kind of things, you would be an enemy. You would be perceived an enemy. But over time, these Kenyans have changed. And to my surprise, over the time, the conversation has changed at their level in the ground. The way people like to say, ground vitu ni different. It has changed to the extent that Kenyans at the Bunge now are discussing issues in a way that I wish I've been trying to push this guy to send me the video of the Bunge today. So I post, Kenyans are discussing things differently right now to the extent that I am surprised myself. And if we take that, because some of these things, we can cry that we've not been doing this, we've not been doing this. But then what is happening? Don't we see that there's transformation in our country right now in terms of conversations? Don't we see that Kenyans are starting to discuss issues? And that is waking up. We might have not woken up for a very long time. But is it happening right now? I can tell you authoritatively that yes, that is happening. So this issue of tribal politics, in another few years, maybe we'll have put it aside. So when we now come to these issues of presidential term limit, we are not supposed to think about it with the mentality of having the status quo in terms of the tribal politics that has been going around our country. We are supposed to have that mentality of future. We are supposed to have a futuristic mentality.
So, what
I
is this
know can be.
futuristic mentality, Joe, if I ask you? Because as I sit here tonight, I am aware that there are certain members of the community, especially those in the political class, who believe it is their time to quote unquote rule. Number two, the people that you refer to in the Bunge la Wananchi, like you've mentioned, though the conversation is changing, but it's changing simply because one of their own is now part of the eating team. So, what futuristic idea should we come out with at the end of the day, even as we pursue to address the issue of term limit? Remember, there are people who think this country belongs to them. Joe, that's a question for you, please.
Yes, yes, I understand. So to me, futuristic mentality means that it is progress oriented. We look at this in terms of where we are coming from. You know, today someone had a very, very difficult time having a conversation. Why? Because he was there during Moi era, and he told us a first-hand story of how he was there when they were trying to champion for presidential term limit, let alone the 5-year second for presidential term limit, how they lost friends and things like that. It happened. The reason he decided to talk to us is because he's saying, I'm seeing you young people, you are here. But I want to tell you that me, I lost so, and he was mentioning names in the fight for presidential term limit. When we had that presidential term limit, we celebrated as a country. When we had the new constitution in 2010, we celebrated. Right now, we are saying the constitution is progressive. Why? We have not even implemented the constitution. We want to amend it in terms of presidential term limit and things like that. And if it is presidential term limit that is a problem in this country, that is making service delivery, that is making Kenyans not get service in this country, then why not have a system whereby the president means nothing? Then I ask, the
And
president
that is
already
the
right now.
point I want to bring to your attention, that the problem is not even the fact that we are pursuing presidential term limit. We are looking at the fact that they are asking to have parliament have an extension of 2 more years. So we start with the presidency, we go to parliament, and that is both the upper and the lower house. And then you go to the county, whereby the best your MCS can do, and today you have to forgive my language, it's walk around and make and fight standing on top of chairs. Nothing substantial. Very few MCS can actually show work for what they're doing. So it is also a bit unfair for us to discuss the presidency term limit, forgetting that all of these other minions are planning to do the same. So if that goes through, they will be pushing for the same for them. So if you can clarify on that, and also allow other speakers to go by, the real Joe.
Thank you. Actually, I mean, of course, the bill is also trying to amend for the other elective positions as well, so that it can look nice, so that the others can support the bill. But we know the main agenda is the presidential term limit, and this is actually the problem. And it is the presidential elections that is usually most highly contested, and it's the presidential elections that have tried to turn this country to turmoil. So why can't we then maybe, because as from where I sit, I don't think the president is that powerful if we have a functioning parliament. That from where I sit, I
If
don't
is the
think
word. Thank you.
yes.
I hate to cut you off. If is the word. As we speak today, we have a parliament, and maybe I'm gonna just pull up that clip in a few, in order to add some context to what we're trying to address in this conversation tonight. And for those of you who are joining us today, I hope you had a great day. We are looking at this proposal by the Senate to extend term limits, among other issues. What do you think about it? Let us know what you want to either object to or propagate for, and we'll be able to allow you to be part of the conversation. In the meantime, we are Mizani 254, where the scales of balance are restored and meaningful conversations thrive. I want to pull a clip here from one of our recent, pardon me, I want to pull up a clip for one of our recent conversations that we had on our Sunday schooling. And with that, I'll cue in the new speaker, who is Miss Stella. So for now, let's just listen in.
It's not a usual occurrence to have a finance bill withdrawn, and it's even not a daily activity to have the deputy president impeached. It also is not a usual thing to see a generation that is nonchalant about political matters suddenly revolt and rise to the occasion. The young people of most nations, they're usually about making their lives work and getting to to make a living, just a decent life, and not to be involved in political matters. But in the Kenya Kwanza regime, we have seen this particular group of people become interested and actively involved in political matters. Again, it's only...
Yeah, and that is Stella's okay. Stella is here with us. And I want to welcome you to the conversation. If only the people's representatives were doing that which is expected of them, we might not be having this conversation. But then again, that's not the case. Stella, good evening.
Good evening, Eli. So I have a couple of submissions, but I will make it brief. So Chalo has done it well by outlining most of the clauses that the bill is looking to adjust. So there's one particular clause he mentioned, and I think I have a different view on the issue of providing for the involvement of both the National Assembly and the Senate in the approval of an extension of a state of emergency. He mentioned and said that this particular role is more fit to be done, or to be to get oversight from the parliament alone. And I don't know whether I'm the one who's not understanding it well. Chalo will clarify, but I feel like this particular clause will increase or create more checks and balances. He gave the example of when the Gen Z protests were ongoing, and the executive said that they had done a meeting or a quick meeting, and it was agreed that we have a state of emergency on that particular day, or the military be deployed to create order, or to bring order to the country. So I don't know. I feel like when we have these roles with parliament alone, and from recent developments, we've seen that, the Senate has proved to be more sane than the parliament. Forgive that word, but we've seen more maturity, and more conversations are better held at the Senate than in parliament. So I don't know what Chalo thinks about it, but in my view, I feel like this is one thing that will bring more checks and balances, and it will also bring better or greater scrutiny when we have the both houses take part in approving or deploying the military when we have a state of disorder in the country. I think also that these two houses may have different views, because again, we've seen from the recent developments, the National Assembly is more inclined or more involved with the executive, and the Senate I think the Senate would bring more checks and balances, but Chalo may clarify about it. And then looking at this particular bill, I tend to think, or what I deduce, or the insights I get, is that the Senate is trying to get more powers in terms of involvement in the issues of the government, money is a big deal, or the fiscal space is a big deal for this country. And I feel like they want more power when it comes to these particular issues, because when you look at different clauses, for example, the provision for the origination of any bill in either House of Parliament, save for a money bill, may originate only in the National Assembly. And then we have the issue of provide for the procedure for the consideration of a division of revenue bill and a county allocation of revenue bill by both houses of parliament. So I think they're looking to get more power from it, and I particularly do not see any issue with this, because we get to get more representation when both houses are involved in money matters of the country. And other provisions or clauses, for example, provide clarity regarding the definition of a money bill. I think also it's just a matter of clarity and trying to streamline issues so that we have clarity and even clarity of roles. So just like everybody else, I have a problem with the issue of extension of presidential tenure, members of parliament tenure, and all of that. So if our country, or if the leadership that we had was purpose-driven, and I will use that cognizant of the fact that Mizani is holding that conference, if we had such leadership, then probably we wouldn't have this problem with the leadership. But now the issue is, we have a country where accountability is a dream. Like, we have people who, even the 5 years that we've given them, we do not see any particular thing that they have done for the people of Kenya. We have, for example, the Kenya Kwanza regime. It's only 2 years, and you know what we are. We have become several things in this country and not happy citizens. So it's only 2 years, and everyone, or a majority of the Kenyans, have expressed their dissatisfaction with this particular regime. So I would think it's only safe if this tenure remains at 5 years. So I think that I don't know whether this bill can pass with some, and some will, I don't know. Chalo may advise because he's the legal mind here, but those particular issues, and including also the issue of the president having to appoint a prime minister, I don't know whether they know that this is a cost, an additional cost, with a country that is struggling still with finances. And considering what we've seen, because I see that the appointment of a prime minister is aimed at creating a balance between the parliament and the executive. We do not know the difference between the executive and the National Assembly as is with the Kenya Kwanza regime, because what is decided in the executive is trickled down to the National Assembly, and then the National Assembly is acting like the voice, not like us, the voice of the executive. So having this prime minister, I feel like we will have more problems than we will solve them, and we will have to get to have to incur more costs without any benefit from it. So I feel like, and this is my submission, that with this bill, the Senate is kind of trying, or sort of trying, to get more power or more oversight. And for some of these clauses, I find it good, because we have a problem with oversight in our institutions right now. And if we could have both houses, for example, go through the bills, the money bills, and try and scrutinize, and even the issue of the Senate being included in appointment and removal of office of some people or some appointees, and I believe this includes the CSs, I think the oversight of the Senate is well needed in these particular issues. And yeah, I stand corrected, but I would love for Chalo to explain to me why, or to make me understand why he feels that it is better for the parliament to have oversight or to have the powers alone to deploy military or to declare state of emergency. Because for me, I feel like having both houses power would help in checking balances, and it will come in handy in balancing powers and what do we call it, hindering the abuse of power by the parliament. Thank you, Mizani.
Okay, Stella, that's a very good one. What is important, and I think so that we do not get lost in all this, the reality is that we find ourselves in this position because the political leadership, first of all, has no interest in following the constitution. And examples are plenty when you look at court orders being disregarded and the law, everything just flies in the face of what should be. And when you have such blatant actions that disrespect the law, then you do not expect a lot in terms of proper governance. What we need to do, maybe, is have a leadership that is committed in implementing and doing what the law requires. Is that impossible? No. But given the nature of the political class that we've had, and for those who know, we are dealing with all of these guys are Kanu orphans, in quotes. We do not have political parties in this country when you think about it. There are vehicles for election to parliament, and after that, people have to rethink about how they move on. So I'd allow Charlo to come in, then probably would have Pauline later coming in. Charlo, there's so many things that have been said, so many questions asked. Part of your, you had a submission that you're also making that we paused, we asked you to pause. Maybe when you put all those things together, we'd like to hear what is your take and how do we encompass the questions people have asked, and are they legally binding? What are these things that can be done to move forward? And probably, do we see this change happening? Is it possible? Do we need to do a referendum? Such things. IEBC is not constituted. How does it work? So please try and answer because you're the legal expert here. And if there's any legal expert, we'd be happy to share the mic so that you can help us to be able to to break down this conversation to the best of the way that we can, so that probably part of what can be sent out there to be able to do the memoranda and to petition Parliament to say that they don't do this. Thanks. Charlo, your chance to speak.
Hello. Yes. I'll begin by answering Marabu Stokes' question with regard to the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Yes, even I myself was surprised that Kenya has been classified as a presidential prime minister system. Yeah, I was shocked because our constitution doesn't provide for the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. The office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Yeah, hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Please, for the sake of comic relief, kindly repeat that line. What were you shocked about?
Yeah, I was shocked that Kenya is classified as a presidential prime minister category. That is, they think that Kenya allows for the position of the prime minister, even though it is contrary to the constitution of Kenya itself. The office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, that is what is being thought of as the office of the prime minister. That same office is unlawful, illegal, and is a nullity as per the constitution of Kenya. In short, you have someone or people who are earning a salary illegally, unlawfully.
Charlo, allow me to ask you. The ideal is we have a presidential system, isn't it?
Yes, but we have a presidential system.
Maybe that supposition is based on the lived reality, isn't it?
Well, it's based on what's on paper and what happened on the August 2022 elections. We have a presidential system. Hello?
Go on, Charlo. Yeah, we can hear you. I was just
yeah. You can note that down. You can note that down. So these analysts from all over the world are actually thinking that we have a presidential prime minister system, which is not the case and which is very wrong. The amendment, the attempt to insert Article 151A, and if you look at the Constitution, Article 151 provides for the salaries and remuneration when it comes to the office of the president and deputy president. So they are trying to to legitimize the expenditure, the money that has been allocated to this unlawful office known as the Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, all this while since 2022. That is what they are trying to do. And that's why we are rejecting it on the basis that the reasons which they haven't provided in their memorandum of objects and reasons in the Constitution Amendment Bill, that the same will create an extra burden on taxpayers who will be paying or catering for the maintenance of such an office. Also, it will be a duplication of the roles. It will be making two parallel basic sets of administrative positions, just like the president or deputy president, where the prime minister, though serving at the pleasure of the president and can be dismissed at any time, is just doing something that the president himself, who has been elected by the people of Kenya, do or is mandated by law to do. So in short, he wants to put a PA there, a personal assistant. And you're inflating the cabinet, you're inflating the executive unlawfully. So that's why we're rejecting it. And that position of the prime cabinet, you can look it online. If you have your computers, just Google the presidential system, prime minister system, go to the list of the countries, you'll find Kenya there, being classified as a presidential prime minister system. It's shocking. So Marabu stocks, that office is unlawful, illegal, and that person is earning a salary illegally. And I believe you can actually bring a suit. There is already a suit that has been filed, though the matter has been progressing at a very slow rate as compared to your DP, the DP impeachment saga. The other question that I wanted to answer was the issue of Stella. Yes, having the Senate contribute when it comes to the extension of the state of emergency, and in this case, the deployment of the military, creates more checks, balances, because Kenya is of a bicameralist. Is of a bicameralist attitude, opinion. Kenya goes to the way of the bicameralist, where we have two houses, where where those two houses will be deliberating on certain forms of legislatures. Basically, they are kind of like trying to ensure that there's a sound legislative process. Okay, so when it comes to what Parliament, the National Assembly, is doing, any decision they make, that decision will be subjected to scrutiny by the Senate, quality control. Okay, so those two houses will basically be doing what you call the checks and balances that you're trying to suppose. But remember, those checks and balances are already provided for under Article 58. We have the presence of the Supreme Court. The presence of the Supreme Court is to declare the validity of any legislation or any declaration with regard to the extension of a state of emergency. The reason I advocate for the unicameralist view, which is the National Assembly in this case, as compared to the bicameralist view, which involves the National Assembly and the Senate, is because the state of emergency is so critical to the survival of any nation that any form of redundancy when it comes to any oversight will be detrimental. Okay? Because once you have been exposed to a position where you need to declare a state of emergency, there are certain practices and procedures that need not be implemented, because they will buy into the time of implementing that decision. They will buy into the time where the danger has happened, where the harm has happened, and now the country is left in a position where now we're waiting for the decision of the Senate. If the Senate disagrees and the harm has already happened, the people are already suffering. Okay? So in this case, we need a unicameralist view where the National Assembly will be able to extensively, without having to have a prior view that even though we make this decision, the Senate might overturn it. The National Assembly will look at basically the decision of making a state of emergency extensively, in light of the National Assembly having 290 members emanating from the basic constituencies in this country that also contribute when it comes to the election of a president. So the bicameralist view, it has an advantage. There's greater, the redundancy in implementation of the decision creates a wide base for greater participation, and it allows for the time for understanding the issues. But the unicameralist view, which is the National Assembly, makes sure that you look deeply, you look with certainty, you look with precision, extensively, that is, on why we need to have a state of emergency. And it is a sensitive thing that even though, let's say, the National Assembly makes a wrong finding, who will check them? The Supreme Court is there to check them already. But in the circumstances that we need a state of emergency to be implemented there and then, we don't need to have a redundancy that will be created by the Senate to have its own sittings to deliberate on that matter. Okay? So if it's a state of emergency, it's good for the Senate, it's good for the National Assembly to extensively look at it with laser-like focus, as I like to put it. Yeah, I don't know whether Stella has understood me.
Stella,
Hello?
unless you have anything to clarify, I think the question is answered. However, there was one question that Marabu had asked, and I think we need to give him a solid answer to it. A lot of Kenyans today are submitting to against or towards the Senate bill among those 19 plus issues that have been raised. Now, Marabu is wondering if he is supposed to submit and he's going to submit it as a group, must it be a legally registered group if in Kenya? Otherwise, if not in Kenya. Number two, my assumption is, and that is towards the same, that since this is a public participation event, anyone within the conference or who is of interest to this as a matter of Kenyan citizen should be able to submit without necessarily having to specify their contact or private details. So Chalo, sorry about that. Chalo, if you may, what is the best approach? And do you really need to be a registered organization or group in order to submit your memoranda? Chalo. Chalo, you want to unmute and proceed?
I'm trying to unmute.
You actually muted once again from my end. I don't know if that's the case. Kindly try and see if we can hear you.
We can't hear him at all. I think he probably has to drop and come back again.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. But in the meantime, that's a question I've personally refused to answer for obvious reasons. Let's listen to Pauline. And then Pauline, the mic is yours. I don't know what you want to share with us this evening. Karibu.
Asante sana. And I much appreciate the opportunity that you guys have accorded me this evening. Mine is just 2 cents. I always get excited when it comes to matters of our country and yeah, looking how things unfold every day. It never gets old. It's always interesting. And concerning the bill at hand right now, I was actually shocked. Inside of all this, I don't think this is the time. I don't really understand why they have to do so many amendments. I feel like they're doing probably, I'm not sure if it's the right thing at the wrong time or the wrong thing altogether. First of all, we've seen so many happenings since the finance bill, and afterwards, there's been a lot of atrocities happening. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's going unaddressed, and they're trying to sanitize themselves by quote unquote pretending to be working. And even if this um, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill, blah blah blah, 2024. It has some very good pointers, but in there you still do see that they have their own self-interest at heart. For example, the extension of terms and all that. I've always seen like the Senate and the Senate kind of seems to be sort of sane compared to Parliament. I think we have a lot of learned members in the Senate. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, this entire thing, how is it really affecting the real issues at hand, the real issues affecting Kenya? For instance, right now, I was wondering, is there for the people, for the advocates in here, is there a way we can um, have a bill introduced whereby it's not only the president that appoints members of the I. Why am I asking this? We've for the longest time wanted to have an IEBC constituted. I don't know if that's the correct word, but then there's nothing, and I don't think that will happen. It has to come from up there, the commander in chief. Why does he have to do that? Why does it have to be him to doing all these? Whereby we have the Senate, we have the Parliament, who can be there working to constitute the IEBC. Right now, our country, I do feel there is a need to have an election body. Why do we have to always have it constituted every 5 years? I've never understood the turnover every time. Why can't we have a body like that? Why can't we have a bill introduced? Because right now people are suffering. We would like to have, let's say, an election even tomorrow to see if we can have sane leaders, even if it's not the president going home, or maybe have powers in the parliament, but we can't do that because our parliament is corrupt. Everyone has been bought. Can we have bills that put to boot people, leaders who are like accused of doing atrocities against the citizens, bills that kind of like hold the police accountable when it comes to brutality, when it comes to protests? We've seen so many bills coming out trying to like um just strip off rights, Kenyan rights. Kenyans just who wants to stay, something is wrong out here. What can we, I don't know, I don't even know what to say. Each time I listen to like these platforms, I'm always mad because I'm like, is there nothing that can be done? Since we can only work with bills right now, is there no way we can introduce or have the Senate introduce certain bills? Of course, they can do that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but is there any way such a bill could be introduced instead of them having bills that favor their own selfish interests? So for me, it's just my 2 cents because I feel like out here, so many people have lost hope. We don't see where we can run to, who we can turn to, who to trust, because our leaders have been corrupted. The ground is so volatile. No one wants to talk out loud because we've seen what has been happening. But deep down, we know people are suffering. Nothing is happening in the county governments. The other day, I saw I can't remember which hospital. Mothers were sleeping on the floor, literally no beds. Nurses are not there. Nothing is working. Full maternity beds all occupied. Women sharing beds. Just so many things. Why can't these people be held accountable? What can be done? Because the real matters are Kenyans are continuing to suffer every day, but these people continue to amend bills every day. We don't personally, I don't care about those bills right now. What matters is the rights of the Kenyans. People who elected these people in the offices, they're not doing anything about that. It's all about their selfish interests. Some of us might be lucky because we can afford the quote unquote the small pleasures of life. What about the larger population? And the larger population is the one that elects these individuals in power. So if that population is corrupted, is hungry, and they lie to you with few cents, it does not make sense even if they continue to amend. They'll continue to do what matters for them and come back, even if they let's say half of the population keeps on holding spaces and the other population is hungry, suffering. I don't think there's any balance. So what I feel should be much addressed is how can we have a constitution, the IEBC reconstituted or whatever that means, because that way they can know they cannot joke around. They can be impeached. It does not necessarily have to be Ruto must go. We've been singing this song since this year began. But the main thing is we could continue singing this since eternity, but without something constituted, without these people being held accountable, saying, okay, this body in place right now, if we don't do our job, we will be out like yesterday. So the point is, how can we have a body like this? Because right now they feel like they can do whatever. They're so arrogant. They feel like, yeah, there's no IEBC. We make bills. We do whatever. People go on the streets. We release police. Demonstrators are abducted. People will be arrested involuntarily. Where we like living in limbo. We want rights. We want us to be respected as Kenyan citizens, but there's no light, really, literally, without an IEBC constituted, because that's part of the constitution. But they're focused on other things, knowing that they're safeguarding their offices, they're safeguarding the power that they have, but they continue to abuse that power. And Kenyans continue to yap every day. We can continue yapping, speaking out loud, but nothing will change. So my question is there any light? Can there be a way? The lawyers in the house, can we go in courts and demand that we need IEBC constituted like yesterday? And we can start impeaching the local MCAs, the MPs, and have same people taking part in the executive. At least we can know, okay, this one was, because it's easy to get rid of an MP than getting rid of the president of the country. People continue to say that, but there's more than meets the eye. It's all about being strategic. And yeah, they cannot continue killing people. We cannot allow that. So we have codes, at least we still have the sanity of that still remaining. So I think we should be pushing this main agenda to have the IBC constituted, because that's the only way I see us getting out of this mess that we are in before the 2027 election even. Because if we do that, it's constituted. I don't know. Right now, the president is the only one who has the mandate to do all that. But will he do that? He cannot. I'll drop because
okay.
I think I've spoken. I'll drop my case.
Thank you. I think your point is on. Quite a number of issues you're raising, Pauline. At the same time, I don't know if I am in the right, I say, should I to answer some of the questions? I have no idea. I will wait for Charlotte to come in and help us with that, especially in the issue of IEBC, in the terms of selection and appointment and reconstitutioning of the same. In the meantime, we are looking at the Senate and the Constitution Amendment Bill number 2 of 2024. It's what is trying to clutter our mind tonight as we try to scatter it. The real Joe, I don't know if it's your hand that is up or if it's the internet that is misbehaving.
No, my hand is not up unless you want me to raise my hand.
No, you can proceed if you have an issue to raise before we go to KD.
No, not really. I actually, my hand is not up, but I can see Obed's hand is up.
It just gone up because what I think I'm hearing from Pauline say, which is good, but also not digressing from what is at hand, the reality and the facts and the issues that we're dealing with at the moment are that we have a leadership that is unable to govern totally and have had 2 years to do that which is required, which is governing and ensuring that the country moves forward. But we've engaged in politics without any proper progress. So when you think about it, we lack people who have the wherewithal and capacity to do the simplest of the jobs expected of them. And so asking for a lot from them is never going to take us anywhere. And that's why maybe we need to ask, and I think this is a question that was asked to this gentleman, Charlo, whether how do we ensure that we effectively use Article 1? I know there's a case in court, which I think Charlo mentioned before. There's a Cyprian Nyamwamu and a few others have taken something to court to see how one, where the people shall. And maybe that's what Marabu Stokes did speak to. So I look at it today and think maybe that's what we need to progress more as a matter of fact and principle, so that even if IBC is considering, the process of considering IBC is long, and you heard yesterday or you read yesterday, they are suggesting that they are not funded properly, and that's why the Americans are coming in, and that's, I think, how they infiltrate the democracy. So it is more about the people taking the initiative and the power that they have. But how do we do that? Do we need to go to the streets? Partially, but it's denied as well. But implementation of that Article 1 for me, I think, would be more important than what we're asking about. KD, I don't know whether it's KD. We need to. Real Joe, your hand is up now. Maybe it's what I said.
Yes.
Then you allow KD to speak.
Yeah. Actually, Obeds, I think it is the wrong trajectory to go to the court and seek interpretation of Article 1. I know that is very radical of me saying this, but I think it is because looking at how our constitution is, the court is delegated, judiciary is delegated but sovereign power. Executive is delegated sovereign power. Legislature is delegated sovereign power. How then do we go to the judiciary to seek interpretation on how to exercise this direct power that belongs to the people? I mean, I don't think they will have a way in which people can directly exercise this power. From where I see,
Joe, I hear what you're saying, and forgive me for interjecting. I hear what you're saying, but we've had a problem with people trying to implement or use Article 37 of the Constitution to agitate and to send petitions and stuff. But you saw what happened on the 25th. Young live TV by snipers on live television. And that concerns you because the Constitution expressly states that people have a right to do so. But it doesn't seem to happen. And when you look at the police, they've been used in a bad way. And I think probably what we also need to look at as a people is how do we deal with our police or improve our police service or whatever it is of it? Do we need to overhaul it? Because I think it's critical because that's part of the system that is used to support the political class and do bad things. So even when you speak about delegation and ask, the court helps to interpret the law and the Constitution. I don't know if Charlo would agree with me or lawyers who are here, but that's maybe the only thing that we can do to understand how then and to what extent can we exercise this Article 1. That's the point I'm coming from.
Obed, just before I give KD the mic, I think from where I sit as well, I understand all you're saying. I mean, the police have used excess force on protesters. That is a fact. Again, this interpretation of how the people can exercise their sovereign power, I think the Constitution leaves it to the people to decide on their own how they want to exercise their sovereign power. And I distance Article 37 and Article 104 to recall members of parliament from Article 1. Article 1 has been left for the people. The people will decide how they want to interpret their own sovereign power. And Obeds, principles of power dynamics. Power is checked by power. So for me, this delegated sovereign power can only be checked by the sovereign power that belongs to the people. How the people decide to exercise this Article 1, it is their own choosing. And it is only, I will say this again, it will only be treasonous or whichever name they will be given when they actually fail to get back that power. But when they get back that power, they will form the next government, or they will determine who becomes their next leader. So that is something also to ponder about. Let me give KD the mic to speak.
KD, please unmute and speak.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Mizani. Thanks, Obed. And everybody tuned in. You're having a good discussion. I think Joe has touched on what I had in mind. The way to put it is there's only a very thin line between being a hero and being a treasonous. And that depends on what side the risk you take falls. The thing is, we know we have the power, but the power, like Joe has said, is always fought back with power. Though they don't use power, they use force. And it has resulted in the loss of so many innocent lives and the suppression. But the one thing we have to keep in mind is the pressure we have is more stronger than the power they think they have, because it's us who have given them the power. A country's strength is determined by two things: the ammunition it has and the funding it has, which is power that comes from the Raya, but through the remittance of the income they collect from the people. And that leaves me with the thought line of when we say we exercise Article 1 of the Constitution, we've tried 37, it's failed, which is the other ways we can actually try to devise for us to be able to be effective. And I've always tried to share this. The one thing that makes these people big heads is because they have the money. If they have the money, they'll get the ammunition. They'll have to sit and say, we are the people who decide on what is right for the country. Right now, if you look at Kenya, we cannot even pride in our own sovereignty at all, because everything seems to be crumbling. I think a country's sovereignty is defined by a few factors, the health system, the education, agriculture, security, I think in transport. And if you look at what this regime has done, all those five sectors have so far been sadly invaded and seem to be in limbo, because we don't know who to run to. I watched news today and people are saying, I was in hospital yesterday, I can't go back tomorrow because of money. Health is not even working anymore. We cannot talk about our transport system that it seems to be crumbling. Security, like just mention anything and everything seems to be going the wrong way. Not to mention the bills that are actually being tabled. So I think what we need to focus on, in my view, we should have this how question that we should bring our heads together and ponder on how do we make things right? How do we make sure that the pressure we have is going to produce diamonds and not end up busting pipes, because they seem to think they have the power. And I can assuredly say at one point in time, even when you force a cat so much to the corners of a wall, it gets to a point it has to fight for itself. So I'm just seeing this happen, and I know one day it's gonna get to a time, and we the citizens will say enough is enough. We've had enough of this. We don't think it's worth being remote controlled in life in every other way. Article 37 seems to be null and void. It's not being respected anymore. We haven't even spoken about what happened on Mashujaa Day. It just went off like that, and so many things went wrong. So there's suppression of speech. There's the bill that is being passed on communication, and I'm just looking at things and I'm like, okay. So I was speaking to one of my friends today. He just had a tweet, and I retweeted and said, if you wake up in Kenya today and don't find any news on abductions or murder or killings, then something is really, really wrong. because it's more or less seeming to be a normal thing to just wake up and find someone's abducted or killed or something like that. So in my take, what I would say in summary is maybe we need to put our heads together and think of how do we suppress this power they think they have, that we are the ones who give them. One of them is boycott and think of how to just make it impossible for things to run as normal. Thanks.
Thanks, KD. But I think I want to throw this to the room before I allow Kumbukeni to speak. We want change. We are dreaming of a change. Then I keep asking, who should lead that change that we want and the country that we are looking forward to having, other than the people who are here and eloquently speaking about the change that we're talking about? If that is the case, then people need to front themselves and put themselves in positions to expect and want and desire to lead so that you can see the change that you dream of. Because if you want to create a country for other people other than ourselves, then it's problematic. Let us dream and let us be the people who want to govern. We are the people who want to be president, people who want to be members of parliament, so that we can change and see that change that we are dreaming about. Kumbukeni, your opportunity to speak.
Asante, Obeds. The problem with us intellectuals, the problem with us who have been miseducated by this system of education that we currently are all in or have gone through, KCC, whatever all of them, CB, whatever you give the acronym, it is not your education. The problem with that is we tend to seek for solutions in the system that is oppressing us, not realizing that the system that is oppressing us is actually intentionally designed to keep us oppressed. And we never wake up and realize that it will take a system outside of the system that is oppressing us to liberate us. In other words, we will have to break the system, which includes breaking the laws of the system that we are currently in order to liberate ourselves. So that's number one. And I don't know if you're all ready to do that. I've been with a few of you in conversation. Some of you have lost contact with me because you've figured out my way is not the way, or at least the observations I was sharing were not the way. Some of you don't want to give up capitalism, which is a system that exploits. So I don't know why you're in these rooms talking about solutions if you don't want to give up capitalism. But it is very simple. The other thing that we intellectuals tend to do, or we miseducated people, because we are miseducated, tend to do is overcomplicate simple things. So we're here talking about we need to go to this entity and analyze this and figure this out, when it clearly, we can all see that that entity is not functioning. Clearly, we can all see that the Constitution of Kenya today is useless. Because a constitution, any document, means nothing if it cannot be enforced. It is useless. It might as well be the toilet paper I'm going to use later when I go to the bathroom. That is how useless the Kenyan Constitution is today. Because no one is abiding by it. There is impunity. The president is doing whatever he wants. So, and if you go to that court, you'll find a judge that has been killed somewhere. If you go to the other court, you'll find another judge that has been killed somewhere. So why on earth are you going to that system to seek solutions? These are the simple things that we don't ask ourselves. And then when we find out, and when we finally acknowledge to ourselves that the system is not working, and the system is intentionally designed to keep us where we are, and we get the mindset that we have to stop allowing fear, because fear does not leave us. Fear is there. Fear is in me constantly as I continue to do the work that I'm doing. The thing that I have refused to do is let the fear control what I'm going to do. Let the fear stop me from liberating our people. So when we all come to that position where we are saying, okay, this system is intentionally designed to subjugate us. I am afraid because this is actually happening and it is a threat to our lives, but we're not going to let that fear interrupt or get in the way of our liberation. Then, and when you get to that position, you're also saying, I'm not looking for clout. This is not about followership. This is not about my name being put down in history as the name that did this and that. I do not care if Nduko is mentioned in the future as long as Kenya liberates itself. I don't care if you ever know of Nduko as long as you know that we, the people, came together and liberated ourselves. So the day that we all come to those things, that is the day we'll find solutions. But as long as we're here in our suits and our nice outfits and our so-called doctor this and PhD that and lawyer this and lawyer that, we are still using the system that oppresses us to find solutions, which is a very stupid thing to do. It is cognitive dissonance to use the people who are oppressing you as your solution. So I'm asking all Kenyans, I'm asking Africans, are you ready to think outside the box? And it's interesting because I just had a great conversation with a gentleman who on Kumbukeni that's going to be broadcasted on Sunday. And I honestly encourage you all, not because I want you to follow Kumbukeni. In fact, Mizani, if you want to get the recording so that you can put it out on Mizani, let me know and I'll give you the recording. I just want the information out. So, and actually that is a great strategy. So Mizani, let me know if you want the recording, I'll give you, and we can all broadcast on Sunday or whichever day, all of us, the same message, because he is telling us to move away from leadership to ethical, critical thinking. Those are the people we want to be running our system with us. And you asked the question, first of all, just to correct what KD had saying, or at least not to correct necessarily, but to give a different perspective. When we say what determines a country's sovereignty, it is not just the things that you named, KD, but it is the ability to govern effectively for the well-being of all its people without interference from outside entities. Kenya is not sovereign right now because you have all kinds of goody two-shoes people coming in to tell us what we should do, and the president is there just doing it like he has no brain. And by the way, that is what he is, a zombie. For those of you who've heard Fella's song, all our government officials that you all respect and call honorable for whatever reason, because I haven't seen anything honorable they've done, they're all zombies. You tell them to jump, or the Mzungu tells them to jump, they jump. The United States comes and says, we come in. Oh, yes, come in, Massa. Oh, the United States comes and says, LGBTQ, yes. Where do you want us to start? They're all zombies. So until Kenya gets to the point where we govern effectively for the well-being of all the Wananchi without interference from outside entities, we cannot call ourselves sovereign. We are not sovereign. And then you asked the question, Mizani, or Obeds, you asked, who should lead that change we want? Why are we waiting for someone to lead it? If you, with your brain and your ethical thinking, critical thinking capacity, has realized that the system we are under is not functioning, why don't you use your skills and your wherewith to figure out and to join others who think like you to bring the change? Why do we need a leader? And having no leader does not mean that we have no direction. We can have direction. We can have a council of elders. We can have a council of people. And elders is not just an old person. Elders is wisdom. A mind that has advanced and matured to a point of wisdom, that it can make decisions that are wise and that are good for the community. So there are many things we need to change. And the one main thing we need to change right now is how we are thinking, our mindset, because we are still thinking in a system that oppresses us. And until we move away from it, there's no solution we're going to get that's going to help us. Asanteni.
Allow me, Obet.
Okay.
Allow me, Obet. You know, I love Kumbukeni insights because she's pulls from another side of the aisle mpaka najiuliza we need to have a reset in this country. Now, I've listened to you and two things I'm picking out that we cannot depend on a system that is already defiled to give us solutions. So in this case, at our constitution as this team that we have, and there are some propositions we are receiving from the Senate. If you look through those 19 issues, Kumbukeni, and you're not obliged to, which among them do you find an insult to the Kenyan populace? And were it that you were to give your view on the same, what would be your suggestion? Number two, we have a situation here that Kenyans actually tired of the status quo. And the status quo is doing everything within their capacity to preserve itself. Now, I hear you talking about Council of Elders, and we am reminded, rather, of the recent events that happened in our country on the 25th of June. I know that date, it's a bit of, it startles some of you when you listen to it. But there was a gentleman within the movement that believed he was part and face of the change. Over the days, he thought to himself that he cannot lead change without understanding how it works. And for him to draw from a cup of wisdom or a fountain of wisdom, he went back to an old man that he believes is wise politically. So today, his mentor happens to be the individual that most of you detest because of the political decisions that were made. So, what council of elders should we approach if the ones that exist seem to be not the best as we speak today? Kumbukeni, I know that's a long question, but I hope you can give it a shot.
So as far as what the Senate has proposed that is offensive of the 19, whatever it is that they have proposed, I haven't seen them. So if you don't mind actually putting them up, pinning them up, and I'll take a look as we continue the conversation and answer that question later. But what I'll say, I'll answer it based on what they've given. But what I'll say is, why do we seek, or why do we even care? Or why do we allow the Senate to offend us in the first place when we know they're useless human beings? They do not have the moral ground to tell us anything. So why are we allowing them to offend us? The reason why I'm not following what they are doing is intentional. The reason why I'm not looking, because I know it's a game. And the more time we spend at looking what they're doing, the more time we are taken away from actually finding solutions. So I'm choosing not to play the game because I know they have no ground. They are not even able to hold their own jobs. Like, so if they're not even able to hold their own jobs, they have no sovereignty in that capacity. Why am I listening to what they're saying? If their being in the Senate is at the will of Ruto, who is corrupt, why do I even care what they're saying? So there's that. And then there's, please pin it at the top and I'll read it as we continue the conversation and answer. I will indulge, Eli, I will indulge for a few minutes in the stupidity and the game playing of these people just to answer your question. And then, and the person you described, and it's good to honor people by naming their names. I think you're speaking of Morara.
No. Actually, the gentleman I'm referring pardon me, the gentleman I'm referring to is...
Yes, I saw.
And I'm referring to Casmuel and
saw his picture with Raila, and it was such a cry and desperate search for approval by Casmuel when he posted his, "Oh, I don't care about this, I'm standing with my this and that." I was like, Casmuel, just shut up and go to the corner. It's so useless, it's not even funny. But besides insults, let's be logical now. You don't have, first of all, there's a lot of arrogance in saying I cannot lead because I don't know everything, because you assume that you can know everything. You're literally saying you have the ability to know everything. None of us has the ability to know everything. None of us. I don't care how many mentors you get. None of us has the ability to know everything. And you don't have to know everything to lead, and again, we are moving away from the leadership. You don't have to know everything to ethically think critically, or to think critically with an ethical grounding. You just have to see and understand that things are wrong, ask your questions and ask why things are going the way they, and then ground yourself in serving your people. And understand that in order to do that, you can't do it alone. There's no way you can do it alone because none of us can know everything. And therefore, you partner with others that know the thing you don't know. So I'm going to partner. For example, I say today, okay, enough with this. We need a council of elders. I'm going to be a member. Let's get together and get others. I'm going to get someone who knows healthcare because I don't know the ins and outs of healthcare. I'm going to get someone who's an expert. My strength, for those of you who've listened to me, is in critical thinking right now. My strength is in loving my people so much that I'm willing to sacrifice my own well-being for the sake of my people. And my strength is in understanding that I really don't care what your money is going to do for me now, as long as it takes away our labor. Because no matter whether I'm sitting in a restaurant or a fancy plane, the minute I see that video of a Congo child that you're killing, it's going to eat me inside. And that's not happiness. To me, that's not happiness. So you don't have to know everything to take on this, to be a part of the movement. You just have to stand with people who know what you don't know and work together with them to find the solutions. So that's the thing we need to do. If I don't know this, I'm getting Mizani because Mizani does that well. If I don't know this, I'm getting that one because that person does that well. And then for all of us, including myself, to put our egos down and just center ourselves in, we're working for the well-being of our collective. I hope I answered all your questions. But let's stop looking at the Senate as... Yes, go on.
Thank you for that. I don't want to turn into a podcast, but with your permission, Obeds and Real Joe, I love the fact that we're talking about the Council of Elders. Now, if I may refresh our history, when Kenya was forming her first entry into the governance system in terms of the mixture, we had something called the LegCo. The LegCo in full was actually Legislative Council. And if I may refer to our way of leadership back in our cultural perspective, the African culture, the Council of Elders was a collective of wise men and women who would advise the leader of the council, maybe the chief or the king or what have you. Today, that you're calling the Council of Elders is actually the cabinet borrowed from the LegCo, the Legislative Council. You might not agree, yes, but that is the system which in our wisdom or lack of it, we refer to it a democratic way of doing government. So even if we were to argue that the reason why we are extending to the way we're extending and our government is dysfunctional is because we don't have the Council of Elders, I am thinking we need somebody who knows something in running of industries and industrialization. We have this minister. We need somebody in microeconomics and whatever. We have Stella. We need something in defense. We have Joe. And name them. So this is the cabinet we're speaking about. So how does this current administration to those problems that we're seeing in our leadership structure today in the name of democracy? And I know it looks far-fetched, but it has everything connected to even the term limit we are talking about. How did our Council of Elders ensure that leadership was not really passive, but it was active throughout? I rest my case, Obeds.
I think,
Sorry,
Kumbukeni, you said it's not a podcast, so we'll have to let others probably speak. Marabu Strokes, I see your hand is up. I'll come back to you, Kumbukeni, because I think there's something I need to clarify with you. But I would like to allow Marabu Stroke, unless it's really pressing, can I allow MMS Square to speak and then you get to hear what you have? Thank you.
Kindly allow me to speak. It's okay. Can you hear me clearly?
100%, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, before I continue, I'll be very brief. As usual, I'll be very short as a cock on a hen. And before I continue, I would like to answer. There's a question that, first of all, let me just correct Real Joe. There's something that he said that our constitution is our system. Okay, now I want to tell you that our constitution is not the system per se. What our constitution is, it is like the contract. Those guys who have gone to law school, who've done economics, they understand it's the contract between us, we the people of the Republic of Kenya, and those people were giving that power. And that's the reason why you people are arguing about Article 1. It gives that supremacy to us. This is the contract between us with Akina Ruto, between us and the parliament, between us and the executive, between us and the judiciary. It is our contract. Now, this contract creates systems. The constitution creates the executive, what you call the executive power.
MM, I'm not so sure if you're muffing your mic or you're using headsets.
I'm not using any headsets.
You're not very clear, then you're probably too close. You're not very
okay,
clear.
now can you hear me clearly now?
It's slightly better, slightly better.
Okay, so as I was saying that our constitution is like our social contract. It creates the systems. Now, I really love what Kubukenia said, that the problem that is facing us is that we're trying to seek solution from the system that is oppressing us. And I like to add one more problem. Our problem is ignorant. And Riljo asked a question, like in this constitution amendment bill, what thing or what provision or what amendment does it seem or does it look like an insult to us? I'll say our problem is ignorant. We all know that we have the constitution. It states these things clearly about the impeachment of Gashagwa. We're talking about someone, the executive power being withdrawn from someone. And if you go to Article 129 of the Constitution, it says that this executive power is derived from the people of Kenya. So when I saw these members of parliament saying that the public participation did not matter, and we Kenyans who have gone to school know this, tulikuwa tunaangalia tu. That is the ignorance that we're having, the level of ignorance that we're having. Let me come to the point of this constitutional amendment bill. Now, what I can tell you, this amendment, there's some provision or there's some amendment that are very good for this country. And one of the amendments that I feel like it's very good for this country is about the vetting of the cabinet secretary. The Senate want to be involved in the process, not just to leave it to the parliament. We've seen very useless CSS being vetted na wanapitishwa. Kama saizi hata tujui who is the CS of education, watoto wanafanya KCSE. Watu wanalia wajalipiwa school fees, CS education hakuna mali anaonekana. When Uhuru was having his cabinet, alichagua technocrats. But for Ruto, because anatumia parliament kuvet those CS, anaweka watu wanataka. But now to involve the Senate, the process itakuwa very long na itakuwa very, very much strict. Hata kama ni ile kubribe, watu wale wa kubribe wata increase, itabidi mpaka bribe ma Senate. That's one of the amendments in that bill. But there's another very bad amendment about the changing of term. One thing I can tell you, the constitution is provide for when you want to change the term of the president, specifically Article 255. Imesema there are those amendments that parliament can make on its own, but they're very specific amendments that the people must be involved. That is, if a senator can propose an amendment, it must be approved by the people of Kenya. And one of those amendments about the term of the president. It is there in Article 255 of our Constitution. Another amendment is about the functions of the parliament. Those two very amendments, ziko hapo kwa Constitution, zinasema these ones must be approved by us through a referendum. And wakikuja kuangalia referendum, they just count it as public participation, not just to participate. You can participate and your voice is not counted. But for a referendum, your voice will be counted. Because they count kama itapitishwa, maybe by a simple majority. That means 50% plus one of Kenyans. Wakikubali, we are tumekubali this term of the president can be increased. That is it. But we are ignorant to that. Tunaitwa through public participation. At sijui mwende mwandike memorandum. Na mnaona hapo hivyo, this very specific amendment lazima iapprove through a referendum. And we are just letting it go. So we people who are educated, who are enlightened, there's some way with that to the law. We have accepted these people. They have oppressed us to the point that they can just do whatever they want, any way they want. And we're just looking at it. So let's work on ignorant. Tuambie watu wache kukua ignorant. Let us invite people and tell them this is what should be done and must be done in this way. Otherwise, by the time tutakuwa tunaongea hapa, tunapiga makelele, kina Riljo anakuja anaweka hapa spaces hizi ni kupiga makelele, by the time tunaamuka, our country itakuwa ishauzwa, everything will have gone. Angalia mambo ya Adani. People are just looking at it. And there's someone who has gone to school and done masters, anafanya kazi pale KAA. And he knows in his mind, in his soul that this thing is very bad for me. It's very bad for this economy, but they're just ignoring it. And personally, I think that the problem is the middle class people in this country. The lower class, watu wa Kibera, watu wa Mathare wamejaribu kupigana. Wakati Raila alikuwa anaita maandamano walikuwa wanatoka. Most of them, they fight for this. Wametry, wamejaribu, hadi wamechoka. Now the middle class, some of us, when you took aware that this thing is unconstitutional, things should not be done like this. Maybe they could have come up with amendment yenye hahitaji referendum kando, yenye hahitaji referendum kando. This thing should be done in this way. But we are very ignorant. This system has oppressed us to the point that we are just allowing it to oppress us. Hata kama ina break the constitution. Let me tell you one thing. I normally tell people it is a fallacy to say that the constitution is the supreme law of land. No. Nowadays, Ruto is the supreme law of this land. Ruto akisema ni hivi ni hivyo. And we're just looking at it as if everything is normal. So one thing I'll tell us, let us stop being ignorant. If you know this thing is wrong, talk about it, communicate about it, tengeneza space about it. Wale wenye tunajua we shall come and contribute it. Tweet about it. Let people know. Don't just know that this thing is wrong and you're taking people the wrong way. I thought that wakati tunaongelea Constitutional Amendment Bill, people could have started talking about the changing of the term of the president, the functions of parliament. Ukiangalia Senate kuko involved in the voting, that is the function of parliament because Senate is part of that. Tungekuwa na people are talking about issues, what the Constitution says and what is happening on the ground, then I wouldn't think we'll have a bigger problem. So let us stop being ignorant. Let us talk about these issues. We kama unafanya kazi mahali and you feel this thing is bad, hata kama una ile uwezo, try to talk about it. Let people know that this is wrong. Because what is happening right now in Kenya, everything is wrong. Everything is wrong to the bottom to everywhere. We can see the courts. The photos are coming. I don't know, the wife of another judge is, I don't know, was employed by this government. A lot of things are coming out and we are knowing these things zinaribu the conflict of interest. But we are just looking at everything as if everything is wrong. Wewe uko hapo, you are supporting the same oppressors. Unasema, yes, I hate Rigiji, but you are not talking about the wrong things that are happening. So let us stop being ignorant of these bad things that are happening to make a change. Otherwise, we shall keep making noise, tutatengeneza spaces, tutaongea, but things will continue. Right now, Ruto has power. He's controlling almost everything in this country. And there's nothing tunasema. People are being abducted. You people mona vile those guys from Israel, they're being mutilated, their bodies. I mean, that Wells Fargo HR manager, mumeona.
I'll give you a minute.
Let us stop being ignorant. I'm actually almost done. Let us stop being ignorant. Let us talk of these issues. If an issue is bad, say an issue is bad. If an issue is good, say this is good for this country. Otherwise, we are going the Uganda way. We are going even worse than the Uganda way. I drop the mic.
Thank you. I think, that's the longest I've had a cock on a hen. Literally. It's listening to what you're saying, a very valid argument. But then I ask this question, especially when you point to the issue about conflict of interest in civilized institutions or countries or places where people are civilized. You declare your conflict of interest and recuse yourself from participating. I think what we have lacked in this country, even when we want to speak lofty or decide, okay, fine, we go the simplistic way of looking at things, is that we've lacked people who have constitutionalism, people who want to do the right thing. Because half of the problems we have today are created deliberately by a system that benefits a few and marginalizes a majority. So, again, there's no one way of doing this thing because none of us has been here before. We are trying to work on a system that's going to help all of us. So it is about different types of expertise. Maybe some people will be doing these spaces to allow people to ventilate. Maybe somebody else will go to the street. Maybe somebody else will come away with something to do with blockchain to ensure that, so that we collectively, by crowdsourcing our abilities, then we'll make the change that we desire. So it is unfair to feel as though, and I'm not suggesting anybody has said that, it's unfair to feel that whoever is going to the street is not doing enough, or whoever is making noise somewhere is not doing enough. If collectively, and we stop speaking in different rooms and agree that this is what we're going to do collectively to ensure that we deliver this, then it's going to be easy. Marabu's talk had something to say, but I see Real Joe's hand is up. So I'll allow Real Joe to speak his mind or whatever it is to clarify something, then allow Marabu's talk to speak.
Thank you, Obed. I think there's something that I've heard, and not once, and I've heard again it from MM. I mean, there's this idea that I've heard several times. I mean, people come to spaces and start calling out, stop being ignorant, stop doing this, call this out, things like this, all those kind of things. I mean, let's debunk this ideology. This space is like a public baraza, only that we are doing it digital. Conversations that happen in this space, and if you look at the theme of Mizani 254, conversations thrive, meaningful conversations thrive. And it is supposed to be meaningful conversations to enlighten ourselves all the 80 plus of us in this space currently need, by the end of this space, you are supposed to be enlightened in something. As I say, just to put more emphasis on that, I'm also disturbed by this narrative that, stop being ignorant. I mean, at your own capacity, you can do, right? Do it. There's something that I've seen several times, the collective blaming of people. I challenge people all the time. What are you doing in your own capacity? Someone, Obeds, and this is one of the spaces we've had, I think previously, someone challenged me and came to my inbox and started telling me, you know what? Do you guys say this and this and this and this and this and this? Constitution this, constitution that, constitution this, constitution that. But if you read clearly, what this person is actually trying to say has no solution in it. If you say this constitution is useless and it is bad, then what do you mean? Do you mean we are supposed to amend the constitution? There's a procedure to amend a constitution. Do you want us to rewrite the constitution? Come up with a new constitution, number one. Number two, what do you want us? What is the best thing to do against this constitution that we have? The basic principles of having law is to bring order. That is the basic of it. Of course, it is also the responsibility of citizens not to follow bad laws. And that is very fundamental. And it is ethical that you don't have to follow bad laws. That is why the Constitution pronounces itself and says the power belongs to the people. It delegates then this power. Then the people can decide not to follow bad laws. The Constitution pronounces itself and says it is supreme law. That means when you decide not to delegate this power, you are still within your means in the Constitution. Of course, excesses will always arise in terms of excess force, excess word. The citizen also might go to the extreme. We burnt down parliament. That is the extreme. I mean, is there something wrong with that? We can rebuild our country. But at the end of the day, to what are we doing as a people? I mean, do we have to come all the time and tell each other, we are ignorant, we are ignorant, we have been ignorant, we have been ignorant, we have been ignorant? I mean, that's not the right direction to follow. We are here because primarily we are talking about this law that we feel is draconian. We feel it has no good for the people. We are talking about it as part of public participation, clearly stipulated in our Constitution. We need to participate in these kind of things, to denounce them, to air our views on them. I mean, is that being ignorant? Following that law, is that being ignorant? I'm asking this question from where I sit. I feel that sometimes we are channeling our anger to the wrong things. We are using too much energy channeling our anger to the wrong things. Let us put our anger into good use. What are you doing as a person? What are you doing as a person? What are you doing? It starts with you as an individual. What are you doing? Challenge yourself. Thank you, Obed.
Thank you, Real Joe. I think I would like to refer us, when you have time, on the Mizani 254 TL, we did have a space on Monday and we talked about the making of the Constitution 2010. I think just give yourself a moment to try and listen to that. And I think there's a lot of rich information that we got out of that, which is critical also, that would inform why it is good, even when we want to make a change, to live within the confines of the Constitution and the law. Remember, we cannot, two wrongs don't make a right. So it is important, yes, while we agitate for a change, and whichever we want to look at it, we have to work, even if the people who are dealing with us are not understanding. We are much more than the few people who are in leadership. We have about 1,400 or 1,600 people who are in leadership. They are not everybody in Kenya. If Kenyans united today and were serious about the problems that plague us, we would change this country very quickly. But it's because we vote the wrong people and we have leadership that is very messed up. And partly we contribute to that. Marabou, or we also do reports here. We try and do reports. We actually did a report for the same space that we had, and it's been posted on the TL and on our LinkedIn. When you have time, please have a look and see. Maybe we all, I think, can try to do something in a different way and probably make a sense. And I like what Kubukeni said. She had something that we can share. And if we're able to amplify that, that's good for us. After you.
Am I coming through?
Yes, you're coming through.
So Kumbukeni, lovely submission. Pauline, Hannah, Analyst Stella, Motomoto. You know, what I've realized is that if the men in this country were the women and the women were the men, I think we would have changed everything a long time ago. Because in these spaces, the people who are here making sense to me and the people who are so enlightened are the women. I think the men, when Anna was talking about suits and ties and KCCA education, I was looking at you, Obeds, because I think the men we are letting ourselves down and we are letting our country down. So let me big up the women. I give you all your flowers. You've enlightened us in these spaces and continue doing what you're doing. The system, as Kumbukeni said, look, China is 1.4 billion strong. That's their population. Their representatives are less than 4,000. They only meet once a year for 2 weeks, right? This is the country that gives us loans, does defense, is a world leader. It's in the Security Council. They only meet once a year in spring for 2 weeks, right? So if it's an issue of a workable system, then the whole world would adapt to the Chinese system. But why don't we do this? Because if you're brought up a Muslim, you'll probably end up a Muslim. You're brought up a Christian, you probably end up a Christian. If you're brought up under autocracy, you'll end up loving it. Some people still have kings in the 22nd century. So how we started this journey of the Republic of Kenya was on the wrong footing. And I think what we are trying to do right now is bringing to the right footing. And it might not be easy. And I wouldn't say it's about ignorance. I think we are all intelligent people, but sometimes it's the lack of the putting in the work, you know. It's like we go sit down, drink some Kool-Aid, talk with some friends, and we say, Ruto is bad, the system is bad, and we forget to put in some work. I remember trying, when I started putting these memorandums out and the petitions out, it was Mizani who actually made me start this active citizen thing. And, you know, pointing me out to the active citizen platform, the organization, the website, which is online, looking at how petitions are made and all this. Apart from being an artist, I found myself now putting petitions to parliament successfully, you know. And I think if we move from the point of saying that we are just speaking about it to doing something about it, and that is why I think we are always here at Mizani. You know, it's very hard to find me in any other spaces apart from Mizani and some few spaces, because I've noticed that there are spaces which are actually proactive on doing something, you know. But I wouldn't look down on somebody and say that you haven't done much for the country, because what is the parameter? What is the measure of passion? There ain't none. Nobody has ever made a measure of passion. And sometimes the people who are quiet actually care more than the people who speak. So I cannot say that somebody has done nothing, or somebody has done too much, or somebody hasn't done enough. I think as much as we get to converse, to talk to ourselves in Mizani, the scales balance. And as long as we can balance the scales, one way or another, it's going to change. Right now, you might not know it, but 80% of these parliamentarians will not come back. 80% of the senators will not come back, because the ground has shifted, right? It's only up to us now to bring ourselves to that position to ensure that We can take over this leadership because of vacuum. If we allow this vacuum to simply because we want to put on our suits and look nice, we don't want to get into politics because it's dirty, then we are going to lose. So I think I stand with Kumbuken, and I thank you very much. Thank you very much for your voice, very strong voice. Thank you very much, Obed. God bless.
Thank you very much, Marabooks. I think, Obed, you wanted to give Anna the mic, right? I hear ladies are the real deal.
Yeah,
so
Hannah.
let's hear from let's hear from Hannah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Hannah,
Thank you very much.
And you'll be heard. Please feel free to give your contribution.
Thank you very much. Kenya is the best country in this world. This one I'm telling you from a perspective of somebody who has gone so much and I've seen so many countries. But Kenya is the best country in the whole world. But the leadership is the only thing that is bringing Kenyan down. Somebody said that the law, the constitution, is like a contract. True, but at the same time, the constitution is the foundation of the whole country. So for me, when I look at Kenya, I look at it as a house, which I'm going to build because I'm a Kikuyu, na sisi ni watu wa manyumba. So the house, you have to have a good foundation for it to stand still. So the foundation is the constitution, and the main poles, which ukikosa kuitengeneza vizuri, itaangusha the whole house, are the ministries. But there is a problem already in our country, and this is where we are starting from the wrong footing. It's the law. We do not teach law in schools. Somebody has to go to university, specialize in it, so that he can even agree to learn an amendment, something to go against this amendment. Because the terminologies that we use are language, which are law. So somebody has to already put herself. Now, we also know from the statistics that are coming from 10 years all the way to now, that we are producing a D students. So these are worker students. So if we are producing these students in secondary school, imagine, unamwambia kaa chini, andika statement ya kusema law yenye ya kupatia president 7 years term is not good. Atakuangalia kaa chizi. So we have already to start to introduce a law in secondary school. First year. Slowly until that person understands what is the constitution, because we do not even teach this constitution in other languages. We only teach it in English or Swahili. And those are rare things. We have to change that. So when it comes to the constitution, when it comes to this participation, public participation, we have to give them the tools that they need. That is, it is not like they do not have knowledge, but the problem is they do not know how to do with the system. Already we know, even the member of parliament, they say, tunakukujia nyinyi wenye hapa, because they go on the streets and on cars, anawaambia aya, tupatie huyu mzee miaka 7. People will say yes, because most of them, they do not even care. Wanamuonaga only by passing through once in a while. So we have to change all that. Public participation has to be done in a building, not on the streets. I wonder every time I see the member of parliament going to schools and going to markets, and I'm like, what are these people doing? This is not public participation. Public participation, you are even told 1 month in advance so that you know this day the member of parliament is going to come to my area and I'm going to sign it. If I'm not going to be there, then I can send my request online to the ministry or to the mayor, who is going to make sure that this thing goes to the parliament. So we already have these things wrong. You already have these things wrong. For me, I heard somebody asking a question how we are going to bring about the elder group. I think right now is the moment where we have to bring think tank, Kenyan think tank. This is a group of people from all walks of life who are going to look at the vision 40 years from now. And they're going to look at it through analyzing the trends, climate changes, impact of digitality, and country age, and many other things. I think most of them, we have data analysts who are so many numbers, which I think they are very much important. We look at them year after year and look and see what trends are we going to be.
So
Yes.
Anna, as you do that, my fear is all this that you're mentioning it's important. However, we have less than 2 hours to have a final submission of the amendment bill that is coming from the Senate. And they have listed 19 issues. Among those 19 issues, if you've had time, we've pinned them on the Jumbotron. Which of them do you feel does not respond to your need as a Kenyan, number one? And number two, what will be your proposals for or against?
That one I cannot give you right now because I haven't had a minute to look at it. I just came from work.
But you're aware this was published on the 26th of September?
I did not. You see?
So there is a suggestion about the extension of the presidential term limit from 5 to 7. It has been very contentious.
That one I have seen.
A lot of people are talking about. There's also the issue of to provide procedure for removal of a governor or a deputy governor from office. There are details to that. And there's something I think that will interest you. There's the aspect of provide organization of any bill in either house of parliament, save for money bill, which may originate only in the National Assembly. So I don't know if you can take time, because it is pinned on the Jumbotron, go through it and find out what among those issues do you feel you need to address or should not be amended.
But the president issue already should not be amended.
Okay, give me something about the president. What do you think about the president extension limit? And that applies both to the senator and it applies to your MCA and your member of parliament. What are your
My views are this. Anybody who is going to be a member of parliament, president, and that already knows that this is a contract. You come here and you are here to serve the nation. You agree to the terms and limits. Once you are done with it, you can request for a second term. That is a normal issue. But the fact that you have to go there and change, this is the things that are making these European countries angry with Africa. Because afterwards,
let's take
yes. I'm just going
to problem. What do you hate about this extension of term limit? Or why do you agree?
Because this, if you look at it well, already we have a 5-year term, and every 5-year term, we usually do the first year. It's the year where the president and his cabinet has to stay and get their tentacles in the right position. They normally have no idea, like this government has no idea already. And this is the second year. The second year, they are not supposed to be they are working completely. The third year, they're supposed to be working until the 4th year. Then the 5th year, they start again doing politics. But the problem is, Kenya, we have almost like every time we have political scenes, every time. That is the reason as to why nobody is going to stand and become a president and be serious from first year all the way to 5th year. This is the reason as to why I'm saying we we usually find ourselves doing and waiting for World Bank, IMF, European Union, and NATO, COP21 to decide for us Africans what the agenda of our 40 years to come. Because the people that we install, they already have no plans. What they do is just do politicking all the time. And now when they get into that power, they have no idea how to manage the country. That is the reason.
In conclusion, do you suggest that we extend the term limit to 7, or we keep the current 5, or should we even now go to the other senator who is saying 4 years?
My take is, for the member of parliament, we can even do 2 years. Then we look at what they are doing. Then afterwards, if they are okay with it, we give them another 2 years. But when it comes to the president, we can give him the 5 years. If he does not manage, we get him out. But before that, we have to know how the country is going to go. The problem is we do not know where we are going. And that can only be taken care of by a think tank. That is the people's think tank of Kenya, to manage and to know here from now on, 40 years from now, because Adani has taken 30 years already for himself. Now ask ourselves as Kenyans, what are we doing for the 40 years to come? Because nobody has even given an answer to that. We have to make a think tank to give it to that.
All right. Thank you. I'll ask you to land at that. I see Kumbukeni's hand is up. A lot of issues were raised.
Yes? Eli, I think the beauty of our conversation is you always get to see the difference in opinions from every speaker. You just from Hannah's submission, I've heard she's saying we give members of parliament 2 years, if I'm not wrong. I mean, that then throws in another dynamic in our governance system. Do we then go into elections 2 years just for members of parliament? Then for the other guy, like the president, you've said 5 years, then we wait for 2 years, do members of parliament, then 5 years do executive and things like that. I mean, how would that work? I mean, that's something to ponder about. I think you wanted to give someone the mic. Who was that?
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for noting that, because I actually picked that where we have 2 years and then 5 years, but we can always discuss at a later stage. Those are, again, your opinions. We welcome them. Kumbukeni, your hand was up, or did you want to clarify something?
So I just read the 19 submissions by the Senate, but before I address that, someone had said something about the cabinet being the Council of Elders. The cabinet is not the Council of Elders that I speak of. They're not wise people, and we judge them by their actions. None of their actions have shown wisdom. If actually they were wise people, none of them would exist as cabinet members in the current government, because the current government is warped. And the thing that I like to ask is, look in the localities of those cabinet members. What are they doing where they come from? Ushago kwao, wamefanya nini? So unless you show me what they've been doing on a consistent basis, not at they gave a school 20 years ago and they've done nothing since, despite the fact that they have billions, that's not wisdom. We also have to change our mindset as to what we think is wise. We have been taught that wisdom comes with degrees and people who went to school to London and the US and this and that, while they are still useless human beings when it comes to their community and the day-to-day functioning of the different important aspects of their community. So for me, that's how I'm going to judge wisdom. What are you doing? I have a farmer we are working with to build a seed bank in Nigeria. And this man, when we first spoke to him, said, me, I'm not intelligent. I'm just a farmer. I said, but so-and-so, you're here analyzing all these things, telling us what you have observed in your community as far as GMOs and giving us solutions. How do you not see yourself as intelligent beyond even the person that is sitting in an agriculture degree class and getting have to change what we call intelligent. We have to stop looking at people who went to school and read books as intelligent when they're useless when it comes to implementing whatever they learned in community. So if you can implement what you learned, and I've seen a lot of doctors, and I'm talking about medical doctors, not the PhD. And first of all, the whole idea of the PhD doctor, like just nonsensical Western culture that we have taken on without even questioning. But I've seen doctors who are useless. You all, I mean, a lot of people have it. You'll be sitting with a doctor who's telling you something and you're like, I need to get a second opinion. Or you've seen a doctor who's blundered in ways that cannot. And a lot of doctors today, by the way, are pushing pharmaceutical. They're not there to help you heal. There's no doctor right now I know who's going to tell me, by the way, in order to avoid cancer, this is what you need to eat. Very few of them are. By the way, in order to avoid obesity, by the way, in order to avoid mental unwellness, I'm calling it that for lack of a better word, in order to maintain mental wellness, this is how you need to
let me interject you a bit. Just I mean, you have seen you quite you quite have a problem with these doctors, lawyers. I mean, according to you, I mean, what do you think is, like, now, according to you're saying this is westernized culture and things like that. According to you, what would be the ideal African culture when it comes to education or because for you to become a doctor or maybe someone who is able to treat people, you must at least have some understanding of something. I don't know, medicine. I don't want to say medicine. You'll think that is a Western culture. And also, as you answer that, just keep that in mind. As you answer that, you've said you've gone through the 19 issues in the bill.
Yes, I will address
I would wish to hear what you have to say about them. So answer this question maybe just in a minute, then you can give a submission on the 19 issues on the bill.
I'll answer the question by asking a question. Kenya has a lot of doctors, a lot of lawyers, a lot of educated people. Why are we in the situation we are in Kenya if we have all those educated people?
I mean, Kumbukeni, I wish you answer the question instead of asking a question.
No, but it's actually a question that is helping us.
No.
If we have so many educated people